And you're very welcome along to another edition of Tippcast. My name is Shane Brophy, sports editor of the Nina Guardian, joined by Paul Carroll of Tip FM Sport and local J reporter Noel Dundon. Gents, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks, Shane.
Good to have you along. I suppose from last weekend's point of view, it was actually the perfect Saturday. Senior hurler, senior Camogie team, senior ladies football team all won. So we'll be going through, I suppose, all three at the moment and through the course of the show. But I suppose just to start, Paul, like it's amazing from the doom and gloom of 12 months ago how quickly things have changed for the Tipperary senior hurlers. And I started reflecting from Galway are kind of in the boat where we are now, and they can't see the end of the tunnel for maybe a long time. But it just shows you, like, if you get the right setup and the right set of belief and things going right, so it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to change things, especially once confidence and belief sets in.
Yeah, I think it probably all starts with trust as well from the management team. Like Liam Cahill has trusted an awful lot of players this year that, I'd say a lot of Tipperary supporters wouldn't have seen coming. Like, the likes of Robert Doyle at cornerback, as we've mentioned, Andrew Ormond the last couple of games, Owen Connolly at full back, Reese in goals now this year. There's a lot of faith put in, and then you have the younger lads like Sam Usheen and Darren McCarthy. Like, that's 6-7 players straight away with new roles. Craig Morgan as a more advanced role, more responsibility. So, I think it's kind of always said, oh, you need to put in the young lads or trust the young lads, whatever. But Liam Cahill has done that, and we're seeing the fruits of it now. And I suppose, as Liam nearly said himself, admittedly faster than they even expected, I suppose. So. I think if you'd have asked anyone at the start of the year what would be a good year for Tipperary, step one was getting out of Munster, and step two would be getting to Croke Park. So they've done that, and I think just the vibe you get from the squad and of talking to management and players and things like that is they don't want to just settle for getting to a semi-final. Like, they will have full belief that they can go the whole way now. As will all three of the other teams left in the last four. So it is very exciting, and it's just, as you said, such a contrast to last year. Walking out of Semple Stadium after the defeat to Clare in the last round of the Munster Championship, and you just knew there was a long summer and winter ahead and autumn ahead before we'd see Tipperary back in action again. So. It's brilliant, and you can really feel momentum building in the county as well with supporters. I'm seeing an awful lot more tip flags now around the place than definitely last year, and you had the things like the meet and greet that happened during the week as well. That's kind of building that bond with supporters. So it's all very much an awful lot more enjoyable anyway to be working around the space than it was last year.
Yeah, and I suppose for Noel, it's probably something we'll probably touch on next week, building up to the Kilkenny game in earnest. But I've heard a couple of people this week saying we're in bonus territory and we have free swings. Like, I think that's absolutely dangerous talk now, because people will say it's arrogance, but like, when you're in the last four, like, the All Ireland is there for the taking now. If lads go after it hard enough and believe strong enough, and like, you're looking at Noel McGrath, Ronan Maher, Jason Fort, they don't want to. They're in the back end of their career. Like, they mightn't get as close again now if they don't take the chance now. So, like, it's, and I'm sure, look, that's all that's been spoken about in the camp. It's not, we're in bonus, it's great, we're going back to Croke Park for the first time in 6 years. We're going back to Croke Park to win 2 matches and win an All Ireland.
Yeah, I think that has to be the attitude, Shane. I think that is the attitude. And I mean, if you look back on the season that we've had, like, we've actually beaten 2 of the other 3 teams left in the championship already in the league, and that, like, and I know we might say, well, the league doesn't count for a whole pile, and at this stage it probably doesn't. But at the same time, it is some sort of a reference point. And like any team that gets to the last 4, you're going to have designs on winning the semi-final at least and getting to the final, and I suppose finals kind of take care of themselves. Really, it's about who can produce performance on the day, and sometimes that doesn't work out for different reasons. We've had experience of that ourselves in the past. Like, particularly, I'm thinking of the replay in 2014. where we didn't show up or we didn't produce what we wanted to bring. Like, but we've had the other side too, where we've really performed on the day. But look, I suppose immediately we have to think of the semi-final, and the semi-final is all about winning. It doesn't matter whether you win by a pint or by 15 pints, you have to win it. And if you crawl over the line as we have done in the past, or if you blaze through in a blaze of glory, it's the same outcome. You're in the final. I think that's what Liam will be trying to emphasise to his players in the next week or 10 days or so. Just get over the line there. And one of the great things, we kind of say that we've had a difficult few years, and we have but it is only 2019 since we won in All Ireland, and we have quite a few.
Yeah, we're the most recent of the last 4 teams to win in All Ireland, so.
Exactly, Shane. And we have quite a few players in that squad who have All Ireland medals, which is something that a lot of the others. I mean, even Kilkenny, I think, is it 2? I think Kilkenny 2 players.
Richie Reid and TJ Reid. It's not many. It's dwindling by the year, but
certainly not starters on the team. Whereas we're in a different category. Now, look, ultimately that mightn't count for an awful lot when the ball is actually thrown in, but I think it counts for something in the wind up to these games, because it points to the kind of experience that you have in the squad, and I think Liam has leaned heavily on that experience as well in preparing the team this year. A lot of those experienced guys have become real leaders in the squad, on and off the field, and that's showing.
Absolutely. Yeah, just so as we reflect on last week, Paul, I thought even at half time it was a very, very strange match. Ordinarily you win a semi-quarter final by 9 points. Probably should have been double digits, only for the late goal that Galway got a consolation. And it's strange. Then you think, God, you'd be going into a semi-final and that to be savage hype. You dismantle, you easily be defeated Galway. But I would say, the poverty of the Galway performance is one. But Tipperary really only played in little bursts here and there. And I was seeing after Russian O'Donoghue's goal, I think we only scored 2 points in the last 12, 13 minutes of the game. We were good without being great, and I think that's a brilliant position going into a semi-final. I think there was an awful lot more in the tank, and I suppose maybe it showed last weekend. Is maybe when Galway threatened to put a bit of pressure, particularly after the goal on, we were able to find another gear. It's just that I find that maybe this is part of the learning curve for this group, is that instead of waiting for the other team to force us into a higher gear, that we need to drive it on ourselves.
Yeah, and what you said there about the game being a strange one, Tip were winning 5 points at half time, and in one hand you're thinking, we probably should be more up, but then on the other hand you're nearly thinking, well, Galway had a lot of goal chances there, and they weren't kind of like goal chances where they hit shots wide or things like that. It was kind of a pass would just go astray at the last minute for Galway. And that's probably where that's kind of the lack of hype or whatever that you're saying, that people that were there would have seen those chances and been like, geez, if we can't let that happen against Kilkenny, because the standard of forwards that they have, they'll score those. So and the game as well, Tip went 6-7 points up kind of after Galway got that goal, and still I was thinking, this game isn't over. We need to put Galway away here, because they're creating those goal chances, or they had created them, and we had a scar tissue of Galway beating us in the past. But I think Oisin O'Donoghue's goal really killed it off. I think the last 10 minutes was, it was just a matter of the clock ticking up to 70. I think both sets of players had kind of finished playing properly, let's say, at that stage. So I wouldn't put too much into the last 10 minutes, but yeah, it was perfect in a way, because even, I'd be listening to all the kind of GA podcasts that would be on after matches, and I'd say if you're to percentage it out, 50% of the talk this week has been about Dublin, and rightly so, for their result against Limerick. Then the next kind of talking point is Limerick themselves and where they're going. Then the next talking point is Galway and where they're going, and then kind of at the bottom there's a few talks about just Tip kind of doing what they had to do to beat Galway, and that's about the extent of the talk about Tipperary. So that's a good thing, I think, because no one is really talking too much about Tip. there's kind of just it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. But it is a good place to be, because not only is the hype kind of down as well, but Liam Cahill has real tangible things to work on with the team and keep them grounded, because the players will know themselves that, on another day Galway could have scored a few goals and it would be a different conversation. So there definitely is things to work on, but when you're winning an All-Ireland semi-final, pulling up with an 8-point lead, you're doing something right as well. All-Ireland quarter-final, I should say.
Yeah, no, I'd almost describe last Saturday, as a very boring match. It was very similar to 2 years ago, that was a dreadful game too. I don't know what it is, whether Tip had the match in their legs from the Laois game. But I'd say nerves probably was a little bit too. Probably maybe the nagging thing of Galway. We had to put the record against Galway to bed. We'd lost 3 quarterfinals in a row, and I suppose there was probably the risk of starting Peter McGarry in the middle of the field, and that probably backfired a little bit, because I thought we were very, very open in that sector, and I think a lot of maybe those goal chances sort of came in the first half. I think we were a bit more secure in the break. A lot of those openings through the middle weren't there after Derek Stakelin came on, and maybe they settled down the defence a bit more.
Yeah, I thought Liam made a very interesting point in the aftermatch comments to the three of us were on it at the time in Gaelic grounds, when he said that the 3 Galway changes threw them a little bit. That they obviously had their matchups sorted out, going on the basis of the announcement of the Galway team, and there might be one change maybe 2, but to have 3 changes in the Galway team was quite a bit. 1/5 of their team had changed effectively, and I can understand how they would have been thrown by that slightly, but you would have thought that they'd kind of get over that fairly quickly and just get on with it after that. I'd agree with you, Shane. It was a boring game. It didn't have the same kind of razzmatazz as Tip Galway clashes of the past would have had. Maybe we're harking back to the glory days, I suppose. But my own sort of feeling coming away from Gaelic grounds was that we won the previous game in 3rd gear against Laois, didn't have to get out of 3rd gear. I think we won the quarter-final game against Galway in 4th gear. But from now on, it has to be 5th gear. We have to find that extra level. We have reached that extra level already this season, and the hope will be that we will just slip up into that gear when the pressure really comes on and when the time comes. I kind of half agree with what Paul said in terms of putting Galway away, that we were kind of leaving them around a little bit, hanging in the game. But at the same time, I never actually felt that we were going to lose it. I always felt that we just had a little bit extra. And that if we needed to turn it, it could be turned very quickly. Now, Galway probably had a little bit of momentum in the closing stages of the game, and had they bagged a goal earlier or maybe 2 earlier, it could have been a different story. But it just it never felt that it was going to happen. They always felt that we were in control and that we weren't going to capitulate in the final 10 or 15 minutes of the game. I suppose in the back of all our minds maybe was the fact that what Galway had done to Kilkenny in the Leinster final, and the fact that there was a kick in them maybe going down the home straight. But thankfully we had enough in the tank, and I think we were well in control and well deserving winners.
Yeah, and I suppose we think about those goal chances. I suppose it was a great finish with Colin Malloy, but I'd say bar for the Robert Doyle slip, probably the goal chance wouldn't have happened. So the Galway got a bit of fortune there. Well, I was disappointed that it looked like Owen Connolly or Brian O'Meara. I can't remember who was the guy coming across. They seemed to not realise that Colin Malloy had slipped past Robert Doyle until it was too late. That they were that maybe a second or two late getting to Colin Malloy, and maybe they could have forced them to shoot a bit earlier. I just thought while it was disappointing to have been breached so often, I thought our last ditch tackling was super in defence. It was like Brian O'Meara had a brilliant dispossession in the first half. We were forcing Galway to make the extra pass, and look, their skill set on the day wasn't good enough. There were the passes, they were trying to get passes away and they weren't finding their men. But I thought, and definitely since the second Cork game, we definitely have become an awful lot meaner in defence. Okay, we'll give away the point, but not the goal. And if we're giving away the point from a free, we're not giving away a black card penalty. Like I thought we've got a little bit cynical in a positive way, particularly since the second Cork match.
Yeah, like the team is learning the whole time, and even lads playing in different positions from the start of the year are learning their roles a little bit better. But I think a tone was probably set maybe early in the game. Jake Morris kind of laid one in on Conor Cooney, and Conor Cooney is a big man, and he got it kind of right in the chest, so he was rightfully down for a minute or two. But those little things like that, you know, kind of show kind of where a team is
Michael
at.
Breen. I think Michael Breen laid out so well. Got a good hit, good strong hit in the side. Like maybe it could have been a borderline free because the Galway man had the ball, but he wasn't in possession of it. But it just laid down the law a small bit.
Yeah, and like that's kind of an old school mentality, but like that hurling is still that game. Like, you know, it's still that game that requires that kind of intensity to it. And I thought Michael Breen has been bringing that all year. Like his any ball that goes in 50-50 with him, he's 100% full speed ahead, letting fly at full speed, everything. Like, you know, he's brilliant back there. But in terms of just the last ditch defending and that, Brian O'Mara had that one on Kevin Cooney where it was actually Brian O'Mara who played a loose pass himself and kind of had to come back and recover. But he's just so good at hooking and blocking and getting in behind Brian O'Mara that he was able to do that. Robert Doyle made a block near the end as well, where kind of threw his body in front of it. So there's a few occasions like that, and Reece. Owen Connolly made a brilliant stop. I think it was Owen Connolly anyway. At the very end, there was a kind of a dive and save attempt by Reece Shelley, but Owen Connolly seemed to get the final touch on it. So, Joe, even the fact that was happening when Tipper were 10 points up in injury time, it shows where the team is at. And I think there's a lot of indicators that point to the team and squad being in a really good place. Like it's been mentioned already a few times in different places. You know, the Seamus Kennedy, Willie Connors interaction when they were swapping places coming onto the field, but also the goal, Oisin O'Donoghue's goal. There's a great picture of Andy Ormond and Sam O'Farrell. I think it could be on the back of the Guardian this week of the three of them celebrating and how happy they all look. And even Oisin O'Donoghue, big smiley head when he scored the goal. But just the reaction of all the players, it just seems to be that the players are really enjoying it, number one, and that there's a real good spirit in the squad. And that all points in the right direction and in towards a team that is definitely growing as the year goes on.
Yeah, no, it's actually something I've noticed. I suppose my eye as a sports editor and the photos that come in from various tip and it's the Sam O'Farrell. I don't know if you've noticed it. Anytime I've captured a photo or there's photos, he's playing with a smile on his face. Like this is in championship hurling. Like it's remarkable. And I suppose we love the tip fans. They love their hurler, love their sweet hurlers, their skillful hurlers. But I think the one play last Saturday that epitomised what's endearing this group to the supporters was Owen Connolly's chase the back of Keenan Fahy and getting the hook in. Like that, it's that Tipperary supporters can accept losing. If the other team beats you because they're better on the day, fine. But if they've beaten you because you haven't worked hard enough, they'll spot that a mile away. But then, look, I think the biggest difference from last year to this year is our work rate is massively improved.
Yeah, I like that was a lost cause, Shane, that he chased down and got there with a big long reach, and it was it reminded me a lot of I don't know if you recall the All-Ireland final of 19 when Pádraig Maher chased back and got a hook on one of the Kilkenny forwards as he's about to pull the trigger. And it was
John McGrath and Walter Walsh, I think.
John McGrath did it with Walter Walsh as well. Yeah, like those kind of blocks they're as good as a score, you know, because they give everybody a massive lift and all that. But I suppose, you know, if you want to drill down deeper into it, more importantly, I think it kind of it reflects the sort of work ethic that has been instilled in this team by the management, and we didn't see that for a couple of seasons, I think, you know, and a lot of that probably was down to the camp not being particularly happy, and it's easy to be not happy when you're losing games, and particularly when you're taking some of the hidings that we took. I mean, we suffered a few humiliating defeats, let's be honest about it, and it's not easy for players to play with a smile on their face. Then you mentioned Sam O'Farrell, there are others. Like Willie Connors is always in smiling as well, and I think it's great to see Ronan Maher the same at centre back. It's brilliant to see, we want our players to be happy. Happy camp makes for a good team, and I think it's one thing to be a manager of a team that will drive them, but it's also another thing. You're managing a group of 40 individuals, and if you have any issues within the camp, you need to deal with them and keep everybody happy. And I think they've done that quite well. It's probably even reflected in the number of people who have seen championship game time this year. All 26 who were named in the panel last Saturday have all played in the championship, which is not often recognised, maybe, and we certainly don't see it all that often. You could have one or two guys who are brought in, and you're kind of going, all right, okay, what impact can they make? But every single one of our subs are making an impact, and I think from watching a lot of the training as well, the level of competition from 26 back to 40, the guys who are busting a gut to get into the 26 is huge. It's absolutely huge. And that's driving the quality of what we're seeing from 26 to 15 then, that's something that we can't underestimate, I think, and that's the kind of a culture that they've created, and that's the ultimately, I think that's at the back of our re-emergence this year. We are very, very competitive within our own squad, and as a result, we're competitive when it comes to the championships.
Yeah, and I suppose, Noel, we probably saw that with I suppose the surprise inclusion of Peter McGarry in the starting lineup. We probably all assumed that his little cameo against Laois, that okay, he's shown enough to say he's a serious option off the bench. But then you see, okay, he's starting, and look, it was a risk, and look, if Tip ended up losing, I suppose the result is always determines what way things are looked at. Look, it was a risk that it wasn't costly, but look, I suppose we did see to think there's a difference in playing Laois when the match is won and playing, okay, admittedly Galway are not at their best at the moment, they're still a level above, there's still an intensity level that probably Peter McGarry got a feel of, okay, this is a different level, but the next time when I get an opportunity, I'll know what to expect. And to a lesser extent, maybe Darragh McCarthy probably experienced it too, when probably for the first time in his probably short senior career, he was taken off because of, I suppose he got sent off against Limerick, or against Cork, but probably taken off because he wasn't impacting the game that management are like. But I would think, and having come across the guy, particularly for the last 2 or 3 years, he will be better for that, and he'll be more steeled for the semi-final.
Yeah, and like, again, to go back to the Peter McGarry situation, I don't think he was picked for the Galway game on the basis of his cameo in the Laois match. He was picked on the basis of what he's been doing in Dr. Morris Park and in Semple Stadium, where he has been going really, really well. And, you could look at it in one sense and say, right, he was removed at half time, and Darragh Stakelin came in and made a big impact, actually, I thought, Darragh did. But, games, particularly playing in midfield in games in the modern era, it's a precarious occupation, really, because you can be bypassed very, very easily, and the midfield sector is more an indication of rather than just naming number 8 and number 9 as your midfield, it's a midfield sector now. It's that middle third sector, particularly when you're playing a player deeper, and like we have done with Craig Morgan in recent times, and Sam O'Farrell dropping back. So I'm not so sure that it's a reflection particularly on Peter McGarry himself, but I would be more looking at the positives in that. Peter McGarry has a half a game played in an All-Ireland quarter-final, and I would have absolutely no hesitation in throwing him in an All-Ireland semi-final if he doesn't start, throwing him in if we need him. I think he was probably picked with a particular player in mind, and Galway's reshuffling maybe didn't help that either. So I would say that we should be looking at that particular situation as being the glass half full rather than half empty.
Oh yeah, no, I did definitely, and like, it brought memories for me back, of Ronan Maher's debut for Tipperary against Galway in the qualifier in 2014, 19 years of age. I mean, and the game just passed him by. He was taken off at half time, and look, what a career he's had since. And I'd have no qualms. Look, it was a form selection. These things can happen. The game can pass a guy by on his debut, but it won't be remembered if he goes on to have a great career. And I suppose, in fairness, like, it was kind of a weird sector to feel, Paul, in that even though you'd say Willie Connors and Peter, I suppose, weren't prominent in the game, neither were Galway's midfield either. Yeah,
it was very much a game where the midfield were kind of bypassed, as you're saying, particularly in the first half. Like, on commentary, I only remember, I think, saying Peter McGarry's name twice in terms of just getting on the ball. Ronan played him a ball and it dropped short into the goalkeeper then, and I think there was one other possession as well. But that was just kind of how it was. I'd say it's kind of like a whirlpool in that middle of the field, because the ball is bouncing back and forth, left and right. You're running back and forth. You're tracking this fella. You're tracking that lad. And there's so much work to be done in there. It is probably hard to get on the ball, unless like when Noel McGrath come on. I think Noel's kind of maybe the role he's given has that bit of freedom to it. So he kind of just takes off wherever he kind of wants to go, and he has that freedom to find pockets of space that not many other players can. But yeah, for Peter McGarry, I'd kind of echo what you were saying in terms of it's a brilliant experience for him. And sometimes with players, there obviously would be a build up in your head thinking, right, this is my first game, now I'm starting, whatever. Whereas the next time he's starting, it's just going to be, I'm starting again for Tip. Like, it's not going to be that big of an issue. And on Darren McCarthy as well, I think it's a brilliant experience for him, because that Darren Morrissey, who was marking him for large parts, really, really sticky. Like, whoever he was on, he was just right on their back and defending well. So that's all good for Darren McCarthy as well. And you wait for an underperformance, maybe, if you want to call it that, to happen at a quarter-final stage when you're winning the game by 10, 12 points than at a semi-final stage or later in the campaign. So these are all things, and I agree with you, Shane. I think Darren's kind of a mentality from any time we've interviewed him or anything like that would kind of point you in the direction to believe that this is going to be something good for him rather than anything negative. So and with that, it's not like he played that bad or anything. It's just he's set such high standards for what is he, still 19 as far as I know. So and it's brilliant for those players as well that they're going to get to play in Croke Park for the first time. Like, that's a big factor looking ahead for 2 weeks. I made it out looking at the starting lineup the other day that I think 8 of the players haven't played in Croke Park before. And then you have the likes of Brian O'Mara, who played once in that game against Dublin in the league 2 years ago. So that's going to be a different thing for the team to manage this week. But it's brilliant, I suppose, that those things maybe happened in a quarter final and that they can build on it and try and bring their best form to a semi final in Croke Park.
I suppose I just touching on the midfield thing. I did think Galway's game plan was to try and play through the midfield, but I don't know. The more I think about it, is more by design. That Tipperary got 14 points off turnovers, which is massive. But the amount of times Andrew Orman, Jake Morris, Darius, the amount of times we seem to know what Galway were going to do. Like, instead of maybe the Galway player in possession and maybe bursting forward and trying to cut, we kind of stood off and said, okay, you want to force a 20-yard pass through me, try and do it. And we cut it out and we fired it back over the bar. It's as if it's kind of, I think I give the management more credit here than Galway maybe trying to tread the needle too much. I think we knew what was coming, and that's where a lot of those turnovers came from. We backed off and we cut the ball out.
Yeah, there were more interceptions than turnovers almost.
Yeah.
That struck me particularly in the first half, Shane, when we were playing into the city and goal there. Like, I mean, there was 3 or 4, one after another.
I think there was about 5 points in the first half we got. They were nearly the same.
They were, you could say that they were, Galway errors, but there were more. It was more a case of our forwards anticipating what was happening on our midfielders.
Kind of set traps, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they nearly lured Galway into doing this. Like, and I think that goes back to the whole area of being tuned in and work rate and all of that. Like that, you're so on your game and you're so confident in what you're doing that you can sort of not have any qualms about standing off a player and waiting for him to make the fatal mistake. It's almost like a cat playing with a mouse. They're there ready to pounce, and when the move comes, they pounce, and it's all over. We saw that on I think it was 14 has been the stat that's been fired around. Even possibly 114. I think there could have been a turnover for the goal as well, where before Willie Connors got on to out to Noel McGrath. That is massive. That's a massive turnover rate, and that's just not the turnovers. That's just the ones that led to score. But as I say, I think that's kind of speaks to the level of confidence that's in the squad. We've spoken quite a bit about Andrew Ormond in the past and the role that he's playing there, and he's so busy around that centre, and it's kind of, we have been relying on Jake Morris to play that role for some time, but Andrew is like the real foil for Jake Morris as well, in that Jake is almost going under the radar. What did he produce? 5 points, was it last week?
And you'd say he missed another probably 2 points by his own standards, easy ones, and maybe the goal chance. Okay, get the goalie great credit, but Jake could probably expect to score that. He could have had 1-7, 1-8 from playing that game, no problem, on a good day.
Yeah, he could have had and yet you turn around, Andrew scored 5 as well, and Jason was on fire in that first half, and his 2 sideline cuts were sublime.
Him and John McGrath were kind of they're nearly symbiotic, and in the way I think Jason's 4 points from playing all were nearly all the same. The way he cut back around to the receiver, he offered himself. It shows a team that's really in tune with one another.
Yeah, that's the point. I think that they are really in a good place. They really are reading what each one is doing. They know instinctively what each one is doing. In fact, it struck me in the first half there where John and Jason were passing these little 5-10 yard passes, hitting the ground and bring the ball up to. It looked as though they were playing in a kind of a 5-a-side in Dr. Morris Park like that. The movement was the passing was so tight, and the space that they were working in was so tight, but they had no issue in getting through. And I just feel that we've spoken about our backs and how strong our backs are and how physical our backs are and all of that, but I just think our forwards are in really, really good form, and we have 6 forwards there who can all score, who can all hurt the opposition, but equally they're all working so hard. We saw John back in the full back line again, defending, tracking back. We're looking at Andrew Ormond, and we spoke about the turnovers. We're looking at all that. That's all come from work rate. So if you marry work rate with that scoring capability, well, it'll take a good team to stop you.
Yeah, and I kind of know John looked a bit annoyed when he was taken off first in that second half, and I think some of that maybe because he played the 70 minutes before in the Laois game. I thought that was a bit strange that he was left on for that full 70. But look, the game was done. Look, Oisín O'Donoghue is really turning into a brilliant option off the bench, and he assisted for 1 point for, I think it was Noel, and then Noel returned the compliment for the goal. And look, take nothing away from the creation of that goal, but it was almost challenge match like feeling how much time Willie had to pick out Noel, and then Noel completely unmarked and having time to pick out Oisín. But it was beautiful to look, and I suppose just the greatness of Noel, he could have easily picked off his own point where he said, "No, there's a goal on here," and just that bit of leadership. And okay, and Oisín O'Donoghue's only going to feed off that to think, okay, Noel, the great Noel McGrath trusted me with that ball, and I clinically stuck it in the net. He put it to the side. He knew the goalkeeper wasn't going to be.
Yeah, it was brilliant from Oisín O'Donoghue, and he's playing so well in that role off the bench that he's nearly kind of maybe playing himself out of contention of getting a starting place because he's doing so well coming off. And you've given his kind of youth as well, it's nearly better just to have him coming off, particularly now that they're going up to Croke Park, given some of their first start in Croke Park and an All-Ireland semi-final at 19 years of age might be a bit too much. But with Noel, he's just he's such a joy to watch. You mentioned that the big roar when Owen Connolly got that hook, and the roar then kind of continued and got even louder because people saw Noel McGrath emerge onto the sideline, stripped off, ready to come on, and that happened at the same time. So there's a huge kind of roar. But it's so good watching him because you can see the brain working as he's running around the field. Like there was one point where, just going back the field across the 65, he played it maybe across to Seamus Kennedy or someone, or Craig, and he knew they were under pressure in possession, so he continued his run towards them and got the hand pass back off him, and it opened things up to send the ball in. Just little things like that. He's always thinking. There was a few stages where on the near side, at the Mackey stand side of the field, he had ghosted into acres of space, and even when he came on, he was looking for the ball straight away because his marker hadn't realised where he was just yet. So he operates at that kind of higher level than most players. And the ball in, as it's been said so many times, Tushin O'Donoghue was perfect because it was too far in front of Dahi Burke. It was kind of hip height, so Ushin could nearly take it and comfortably turn. And it was even just the finish was like nearly a golfer in terms of Noel McGrath's stance when he played the ball in. It was just kind of real placement and perfection. So the kind of run he's on at the minute is just so good, and it's such a joy to see. And it gives the team a lift every time he comes on the field. And it's not just because, here comes one of our greats, Noel McGrath, but it's actually because he makes a big difference when he does come on. Like I saw a few tweets earlier in the week saying how we're Tip up by 4 points when he was introduced, and within kind of 10 minutes of his introduction, they're up by 11. Now, that's not all down to Noel McGrath, but it's there's definitely a correlation with his introduction and Tipperary kind of putting the game away. So, it's so good to see. And John was probably, as you said, annoyed coming off, but that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And it probably softened the blow a bit that it was his brother coming on for him. So
that's why he was so annoyed, Paul, that his brother was coming on from
the quality. I'd say the quality. He knew it was like the quality of ball coming in at the start of the second half wasn't as good as it was in the first half. Like so, and when I suppose he was 3 points away, and I suppose it's something we might tease out next week with Noel, and I suppose the shortage of experience of Croke Park compared to Kilkenny. God, it's very tempting to start him up there, isn't it? And okay, you might lose the ability to bring him off the bench, or do you do Peter Canavan with it? Start him, bring him off, maybe bring him back on with 10 or 15. I'd say if that's one I think that's going to focus the management's minds. If I was to say it now, I'd say the lean towards we'll stay doing what we're doing with him all year. But it's very, very tempting in All-Ireland semi-final to have Noel McGrath on the field for as long as you can, rather than maybe 20, 25 minutes at the end.
Yeah, I'd be for going the other way, Shane. I'd be for bringing him in, and my thoughts would be on this one will be because Noel McGrath is such an intelligent player. Look, it's quite obvious that there are some players who do really well when you bring them in as subs, and there are others who don't, who need to start, who are not able to come in and get to the pitch of a game. But I think what's quite noticeable with this Tipperary team, and any of the subs who come in are making an impact, whether it's Seamus Kennedy coming into the back line just to shore things up, or Dara Stakelum into midfield, or Noel into the forward line, or whoever the case would be, Ushin O'Donoghue, as we've spoken about as well. It's a point that I've always made to subs with teams that I'm involved in, that if you're a sub, you're not just there to sit on the sideline and wear the tracksuit. You're watching what's going on the field. You're watching patterns of play. You're watching, if you're a forward, you should be watching how the defenders are defending. You should be trying to pick out the weakness in the different defenders if they are there. And equally, if you're a backman and there's one of your colleagues is in trouble, you're watching the guys who are marking him and why is he in trouble and what's he doing. And if you get the chance, you're going to go in and rectify it. So when you can stand back and watch that, you're in an advantageous position. The player on the field often doesn't have that luxury because things are happening at such a speed. Now, the fellas that we have on the bench are clearly watching the game. They're not just in for the Maiwadi and the Jaffa Cakes. They're watching what's going on. And when they come in, they have that in their head that they're able to make that impact. And I think Noel is case in point in that. If it was 5 years ago, I'd be probably saying start him. But I think at the minute, when Nola's coming in with that 20 or 25 minutes to go, the tempo of the game has just dropped a notch, and that's playing right into his strength. That he gets the ball, he gets the time on it, and he can hurt the opposition with it. So I think I would be more for him coming on and playing the guys who will get you that sort of 40, 45 minute mark in the game.
I'd agree with you, but I'd say it's definitely a consideration, and I suppose it's just with that experience factor. I suppose Alan Tynan has played in Croke Park before a couple of times. I think he played in that league match a couple of years ago, Paul, as well, against Dublin, and he played in 2 minor All-Ireland finals back 10 years ago. It's hard to believe that's 10 years since we were in those 2 finals, and I suppose he's fresh now, and it maybe like Seamus Kennedy's another one, but he's kind of in the Noel McGrath role. He's very effective coming off the bench, 10 or 15 minutes to go. And just before we wrap up on the Galway match, I think I'd just like to touch on Rhys Shelley's performance. And look, Andrew Ormond was a justifiable man of the match with Marty, but he was my man of the match from a Guardian point of view, not just with the timing of his save just before half time. I think if Galway get a goal there, they're going into half time with serious momentum. But I thought his puck outs, particularly in the first half, were outstanding. And I have to sit through the match fully to go through how many have his puck outs resulted in points in that first half. But his ability to pick out his men, and I suppose his best puck out was the one straight after the goal. Like, you think I wouldn't say he'd be disappointed. Like, he was beaten from a narrow angle, and look, sometimes goalies would say, God, I really should have stopped that. I had my angles right. And look, fair play to Malai. He got a bit of a daisy cutter on it, and it was a great finish. But Rhys put it completely out of his head, got the ball, pinged it 80 yards to Andrew Ormond on the run. Ormond, tight enough angle now over the bar. I thought, God, that was a serious. That was for I think that was the most important play of the match from a Tipperary point of view.
Yeah, it answered back the goal straight away and kind of quelled any Galway momentum that they could have built. Let's say if Galway fired over another point straight away, suddenly you're thinking, God, we're rightly on the back foot here. But that puck out was incredible. Like Rhys's technique to deliver a puck out that long, but also he's not skying it where the player is waiting for the ball to come down on top of him. He's able to just drill it through the air. So much so that Andy Ormond didn't really need to break a stride in connecting with the ball. Now that point was just top tier stuff, like catching the ball on the run, running out to the sideline, beating your man down the sideline and throwing it over the bar. It was probably the best score of the day. But yeah, Rhys's puck outs, and something that I think is worth noting as well, he doesn't really have a traditional out ball, let's say, for the puck out. Sometimes if you're playing in goals and you're looking out and you're like, oh, is that pass on? Maybe not. I'll just lump it down on the big lad. Like, that is kind of what some teams would have the luxury of. But our half forward line is more mobile, more suited to those drilled puck outs into space. I'm sure Rhys up in Croke Park, a big wide field, those spaces might be a little bit wider compared to some of the other grounds, or at least it might look that way on the eye. But the puck outs were brilliant. He made a few key saves. The one just before halftime that you mentioned was a nice height for him, but it was at the wrong side to where he holds his hurley sweep to react quick and switch the boss of the hurley over to his right hand side to keep it out. Closed down the angle in the second half for a chance as well, and stopped a 21-yard free with a degree of ease. I don't think it was the most venomous strike from Colin Mannion, but his puck outs are really, really good. And yeah, he's just really kind of, there's no hesitation really. It's kind of, I see a lad in a bit of space, bang, ping straight into his hand, and that's just a real asset to this Tip team. And the saves were big as well. And yeah, he's maybe a little bit unlucky at the end for that goal. It was kind of a real awkward strike from Declan McLaughlin. It seemed to be one of those ones where it was kind of, you'd often do it in training drills where you're kind of running out to a corner and just banging it off the ground at someone, pop spin, it's coming at you quick, hand or hurley, and it goes hand and it just skids off his hand and goes in. But again, similarly to the point I've made, you'd much rather something like that happen in a game you're winning by 12 points than later in the year.
Yeah, and I suppose it sets up a semi-final with Kilkenny, and I would assume Cork and Kilkenny managements were covering all bases last weekend. No, but I would have assumed Pat Ryan was probably in Limerick anticipating Tip winning, and Derek Ling was probably in Croke Park anticipating they were going to be playing Limerick, when actually Derek needed to be in Limerick and Pat needed to be in Dublin. So,
this week.
yeah, I think we were all kind of anticipating it would be Tip and Cork, but now it's Tip and Kilkenny, and I'm thinking Kilkenny are looking at us and think, God, it's not Limerick. We have a great opportunity, but I think Limerick would have Kilkenny would have probably said, oh, underdogs now would be better. Now they're probably going to go in as marginal favourites, and Tip are probably thinking, God, if it was against Cork now, we would be underdogs. But now with Kilkenny, it's a winnable game. Like, I think Kilkenny are looking at us the same. So they're two incredible semi-finals, and like, I suppose just touching on Dublin's win last weekend, and I'm the more I'm thinking of that semi-final against Cork, I think they have a massive chance. Like, I don't think, like, you can only imagine all the confidence they would have gotten through that, and like, I think their manager Neil O'Callaghan is a shrewd operator, and like, all he has to say this week is, lads, Na Fianna bet the Cork champions to win the All-Ireland club final last weekend. There's no reason why this Dublin team can't go out and beat a Cork team in an All-Ireland semi-final.
Yeah, I mean, right, you could say that the element of surprise is gone, but like, the element of surprise was gone, 10 minutes into the second half. Everybody knew exactly what Dublin were bringing, particularly Limerick knew what they were bringing, and they still weren't able to combat it. Like, I think in lots of ways, Shane, Dublin have a free swing against Cork. Probably the majority of people, just like the Limerick game, probably the majority of people don't expect them to win the game. But I think if Dublin can get to the level that they got to against Limerick, they'll take beating. There's also that slight question mark about the Cork mentality. I think when the chips are down, and the chips will be down in All-Ireland semi-final at some stage in the game, you're going to come under the cosh, and it's going to be a question of have they the mental resilience and strength to withstand whatever Dublin can throw at them. And I think Dublin will throw the sink at them. I really do.
And plus Cork were sluggish in the 3-week gap leading up to the 3-week break up to the Limerick game in the round robin, and they came out very flat. Like, the 4 weeks, like, this is new for them, having to deal with a 4-week gap in I suppose at the back end of the championship.
It is, and it comes on the back of winning that Munster final as well, which there would have been a fair old degree of celebration as well, like, and rightly so. But it does take a while to refocus, and right, they've had that 4 weeks. The other Dublin come in on the back of huge momentum, having beaten Limerick, having taken out the favourites for the All-Ireland. Let's be honest about it. Limerick were probably favourites for the All-Ireland. Dublin took them out with 14 men. Now, Crummy is a big loss. There's no doubt about it, because of the experience that he brings as well. He is a big loss to them. But I think Dublin would be quietly confident. As you mentioned about Neil O'Callaghan, he is a shrewd operator. He's already won an All-Ireland club final with his club and that, like, and he knows his onions, as we say down around here, and he's going to be a guy who's going to be really putting it to the Dublin players. Lads, are you aware of the opportunity you have here? Are you really aware of the unique opportunity that you guys have to make it to an All-Ireland final? And who knows, it could be a double for Dublin in an All-Ireland final. You never know.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we'll touch more on those semi-finals next week. Paul, just we'll turn our attention to Camogie now. I suppose the potential is on Sunday week for a Tip Kilkenny on the double if Tip avoid defeat to Clare tomorrow in Semple Stadium in their final group game. It's actually for people who are unaware, it's on before the All-Ireland minor final between Clare and Waterford at 5:15, so it's a nice double header to take advantage of if people are at a loose end tomorrow. Tip will be expected to win tomorrow. They've eased past, in the last couple of weeks, Wexford and Limerick. But to me, like, we know Limerick and Wexford are struggling at the moment, but God, there was a ruthlessness in what they've done the last few weeks. I love that. They'd be expected to do the same against Clare, and like, they're interesting to see. Like, if it'd be a huge opportunity for Tip and Kilkenny Camogie teams, you can imagine like Sunday week, if that is a double header, you're probably talking at least 20,000 in the stadium for the start of that match, because people will take advantage of the fact that Tip and Kilkenny are near Camogie, and it's a huge promotional tool for that team.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and that would be that's what we're all kind of hoping for. Would be the scenario. It would be just a kind of a unique occasion in that sense as well, and something I think that supporters would row in behind. But yeah, the last few weeks, I think Tip have beaten Limerick and Wexford on a combined something like 744 to 15 points. I think they've won the last two games combined. So I was talking to Dennis Kelly and just kind of asking him, do you take much from that? Because there's a huge gulf in class between the top of the senior championship in Camogie and let's say the bottom bottom quarter of the team. So while it has been great and Tip have beaten what's in front of them, it's probably been a nice way to bounce back from the defeat against Cork, because that would have been bitterly disappointing. The first game of the championship, the one you probably would have been targeting against the reigning All-Ireland champions, and you lose by 18 points. So Tip have kind of rebounded very well. If they can beat Clare, it sets up the quarterfinal with Kilkenny, and then you can really see, okay, where exactly are we? Because there's probably a few worries about the team from me anyway, just with the players that unfortunately aren't there in terms of Clodagh Quirk and Emer McGrath. Probably defensively, just looking at the Cork game, I thought we were we let Cork in very easy for the goals that day, so you'd be a little bit worried from that point of view. But they've only conceded, as I said, 15 points in the last two games. So if they can get over Clare this weekend, which, as you said, they'll be favourites to do. Clare, I believe, did they draw with Limerick?
But I think they only lost to Cork by 9 last weekend. Yeah. I think they were pretty happy with that performance. So, but and then I suppose they probably have a free swing tomorrow. Clare already through to the quarter final. It all depends whether they're finished second or third. And it's the same for Tip. Like, they're both through, but I think there's probably more at stake for Tip, as they're chasing being on the same bill as the hurlers. Really, I think if Tip finished third, they probably could be on the Saturday quarter final. It should be. You don't really want to split the two teams up.
Yeah, and that would have to be the way, because either Tip or Kilkenny then would be split to play on the Saturday. So yeah, it is a big game tomorrow, and Tip would have had the call whether they wanted to play it in Semple Stadium, but I suppose it's probably with the view of, well, our next game is going to be on in Croke Park anyway, so we may as well get into a big field, a big stadium, and get that feel. So that's a good thing as well. It's always interesting with this Tip team just to see what they do with Karen Kennedy, because it's a real tough one, because you'd love to have two Karen Kennedys on the team and play one in defence and one in attack, but you only have the one, and you kind of have to try and get the most out of it. From my point of view, I'd always have her in the forwards for this Tipperary team, just because at that centre back position, I think Caoimhe Maher does a fairly good job there and can hold the fort there. But having Karen Kennedy, like you kind of saw it in the league final last year against Galway. She went up full forward, first ball to come in, out in front of her marker, took it on back of the net. That's huge, and she just has that kind of athletic ability that she is able to do that. So be interested to see where she will play in a quarter final. But yeah, it's definitely been a good response from Tipperary from that opening round defeat to Cork, and a nice way for them to build confidence and kind of slowly build a performance once we get into the business end.
Yeah, particularly among the confidence among the forwards, Noel, because I definitely think the last few years when we've fallen short at the semi-finals, we found it hard to score in that last 10 minutes when the fat is in the fire. Like, defensively, we're not conceding enough, we're not scoring enough at the other end, and okay, you're scoring heavily against Wexford and Clare, and I do think if Tipperary are going to break the glass ceiling this year, it's going to be because we're scoring more in the forwards. Maybe we'll have to concede a small bit more at the backs, but we need to be definitely more maybe hitting the back of the net or raising more high flags.
Yeah, and I suppose, Shane, that was the principal reason for shoving Karen Kennedy up into the forward line, to create that drive and that dynamism that was maybe needed up there, and not just in terms of scoring, but also in terms of bringing other players into the game as well. In lots of ways, she's like the Noel McGrath of the Camogie team. That she makes things happen when she's there in the forward line. And I agree with Paul too. Like, it is a real question. Do you play her in the back line? Do you play her in midfield? Do you play her in the forward line? And I suppose it's probably an indication maybe of the level of confidence that management have in the other two sectors, that they are playing Karen in the forward line, and that they feel that let's use her scoring capability and her ball winning capability in the forward line rather than anywhere else, and see what she can do up there. We have good forwards besides, but as you said, they need to deliver on the bigger day as well. And maybe they're showing in the last couple of games run up big scores as well. And probably the match against Clare is a big one because it is a big one because you're as you mentioned, you're playing for the right to maybe tug out in Croke Park in the semi-final on the same day as the hurlers, which would be I think it'd be a great occasion. I think it'll give Camogie great exposure as well. So hopefully it'll work out.
Yeah, and I suppose there's we kind of the last few years, like I say, we've lost semi-finals narrowly, but we've kind of lost the same way. They're kind of be low scoring matches. Think, okay, if we go out this year, at least go out maybe scoring more. And look, if it doesn't work out, But we probably that element of we probably needed a small bit more in attack. And look, Grace O'Brien's on fire, Claudia McIntyre's going well. So it'd be interesting. Hopefully, we'll touch on more on that next week, and we know for sure if what semi-final or what quarter-final we're in. Sorry, and this was finally the ladies footballers, Paul, in an All-Ireland quarter-final for the first time in 45 years. They beat Donegal last Saturday in Bancha, 11 points to 1-6. Finally got through that glass ceiling into a quarter-final. I suppose the follow-on this week was the fact that the quarter-final has been fixed for 5:15 on Sunday week in the middle of the second half of the Kilkenny game. I suppose we found out the fixture Monday night, and I suppose Deputy Michael Lowry released a statement that he'd been contacted by players and supporters, and I suppose highlighting the issue. And we created in fairness, we got a response from LGFA explaining the reasoning why it wasn't, and I suppose they did put their best foot forward in terms of this. There's a potential problem here, and I suppose the LGFA have said that they're on the Saturday. There's an intermediate quarter final between Meath in Camogie, Meath against Down. That was already scheduled, so that's why the Meath game is on Sunday, because Meath have dual players. I accept all that. I do still, and there is another conundrum coming, not just for Tip, but for if they lose, Galway and Waterford are playing in Camogie this weekend. The loser of that match probably will be playing a quarter final in Croke Park at 3:00 on before the Galway Dublin match in hurling, Cork Dublin match in hurling, while their Galway and Waterford ladies footballers are playing a quarter final in Tuam Stadium at the same time. So I'm all for associations having to keep their fixture schedules, but there should always be a bit of flexibility. I always look at this as that there's an easy fix here. You move the Camogie match to the Sunday, you play the Meath Tip match on the Saturday, and you move the Galway Waterford match to the Sunday. Like, would juggling those three fixtures around make a huge difference to the plans of Galway, Waterford, Tip, and Meath and Down? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's only one day. Like, you're not moving it a week, or you're not, and it'd probably be on the same venues and things like that. So yeah, it was really disappointing, because you have that kind of elation of Tip have beaten Donegal into an All-Ireland quarter-final. This is brilliant now with another game on TV, and now the game.
And it's a very winnable game against Meath. Like, I don't get Meath are more established, a senior than we are, but like, I remember watching the game. They played Meath last year on TG Cahir, and there was only a couple of points in it. And I think this Tipperary team are a lot better than last year's Tipperary team.
Yeah, and a lot of credit, I suppose, has to go to Ed Burke and the new management team there. Like, Ed has been on with myself on Across the Line, but he's been on with Ronan Quirk on Extra Time on a Monday evening on Tip FM as well. And you can see, just from hearing him, he's great confidence in this team. Like, he was mentioning that they'll have no fear of going playing Meath. They can see themselves very much a winnable game and things like that. So, a manager coming out and being so confident and positive, I suppose, in his own team's ability kind of shows where the mentality is for this Tipperary team. And why not? Like, I've kind of long held the belief that Aisling Maloney is one of the best players in the country at ladies football. And of course, she's a professional athlete now in Australia as well. So that has helped things as well. But her ability is second to none. Anna Rose Kennedy had a really good game there.
Brilliant. See her back to her best again.
Yeah. So, like, it's funny. I was only thinking about it earlier today. Kind of, well, it's so great to see how well they're doing at the minute. You kind of still have that kind of thought in the back of the head. Geez, imagine if they still had Orlo Dwyer or Ashton McCarthy. But I kind of don't want to get into that talk because it's nearly disrespectful to the girls.
And they've been gone a couple of years now. Like, so I don't think it could be 3-4 years since they played. So like that ship has sailed. Maybe towards the end of their career they'll come back and give it a go for a couple of years. But like that, it's
brilliant what Aisling Maloney is doing. Juggling both. Like, that is a huge commitment, and it's definitely worth mentioning. But yeah, they've had a really good campaign. I suppose the whole year would have been building up to that game, because when the draw was made, Tip were in the Munster Championship with All-Ireland champions Kerry, a really good Cork team, and a really good Waterford team who finished third in Division 1. So it was always going to be a difficult task in the Munster Championship. So you knew it was probably going to come down to whoever Tip were playing. Kind of the second seed in Tip's group in the championship. It was always going to come down to that game. And probably a bit fortunate that was their home game. That's always a nice little advantage to have. But yeah, they got over the line by the 2 points. So that's what all the kind of build-up was. And you could hear some of the players talking after the game that they were nearly on the car to the way to the game, saying the day is here. Like, that this is the day we've been preparing for. So to go out and put in a really good performance and win that game is huge. And now, similar to the hurlers, once you get out of Munster, it opens things up. In ladies football, once you get out of the group, it opens things up. And as you said, they had a very close game with Meath last year. They won't fear them. So let's see what happens.
And Shane, on the whole fixtures thing there, earlier this year, Tipperary, LGFA, and the Camogie board announced an initiative whereby the fixtures were going to be outlined from the very start, so that each entity had their own weekends, and every player knew exactly when they were going to be playing and all the rest of it. And it was heralded as being something really, really good and really, really new in the country. In fact, one of the first counties in the country to do that. And you're looking down the line, you're saying, well, this is the way the integration process has to work from the point of view of all the associations. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be heading in that direction when it comes to the inter-county championships, but it needs to. That's the direction that it needs to go. And in lots of ways, Tipperary have shown the way with their own club championships, and others need to follow, including the parent associations when it comes to making fixtures.
Yeah, the dual situation probably makes that the difficult thing.
That's the nub of it here. And like there was an article last week on Hannah Looney, the Cork player, having to choose between playing Camogie for Cork and playing ladies football for Mayo at the same time. And I understand her wanting to give both, but like the dual player is gone in the men's game. It's gone probably a good decade now. I suppose a lot of the reason the fixture issue is the way it is for Tip next weekend is the dual player. If there was no dual players with Meath, I'm sure the Ladies Football Association would probably have liked to have acceded to Tip's request for Saturday, because look, you'll have the diehard ladies of football supporters and family and friends of the players in Navan, but the soft core supporters, they'll be in Croke Park, and not in Navan. And look, from your point of view, Paul, it probably means, I don't know whether you could do live commentary next Sunday, for the likes of me, trying to get maybe a freelance reporter from Tip up there. Tip probably have more than one eye in Croke Park too. There's more than one strand to the difficulty this fixture has created. Look, and in fairness, the management and players are fully focused on 5:15 on Sunday. Like they've accepted the situation. While they're disappointed, their minds are on that game, and we want them to focus on that. It's just it's just a pity it hasn't worked out better for everyone.
Yeah, because you could really drum up kind of support. And similarly, like if the Camogies beat Clare and they have that game against Kilkenny, there'll be loads of kind of build up and hype to that game because a lot of people will be there, a lot of people will see it. But yeah, there is an element that this game is going to be hidden away. It
will be on TG Carr at 5:15, but
yeah,
if Tip and Kilkenny gets sick, it goes to extra time, which has the potential to. There's not many Tipperary people are going to watch it. Hopefully, we'll win it a normal time, and people will be able to watch the ladies' football. Most of the game, none plus, like the ones that don't go to Croke Park.
Yeah, it is. It's just the kind of the way it's played out, but it is definitely a shame. And yeah, it's kind of made our job difficult in terms of how trying to get commentary teams and that in place in Navan, and then you're only kind of doing half a game really. And what if the game goes to extra time? And there's all things like that we have to iron out here over the next kind of couple of hours really. But yeah, it's just a shame because if it was on the Saturday, you could have a real kind of build up to it, and it would be the premier kind of fixture of the day for Tipperary GAA supporters. So, but now it's kind of just a little bit hidden away. But if you're not going up to Croke Park and you are sitting down in front of the TV, you're going to get 3 Tipperary games pretty much back to back. So, it's just a shame how it's worked out. But barring your suggestion, there's probably not an awful lot that can be done.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what we one of the things, Noel, before we wrap up about integration, that it might help solve it in time, is that if they're all in under the one umbrella, that there will have to be scheduling of games that don't come across each other, and there might be a thing of telling the Meath and Down Camogie match, like, you have to go to the Sunday. We might have planned for Saturday, but we have to try and make it fair for everyone, and like having 2 Tip teams playing at the same time on national television. There was 30 miles between now and Navan and Croke Park, 40 miles. Optically, it's not good. Whatever about round robins clashing, but when you're getting to knockout championship in hurling and ladies football and Camogie, you've got to be avoiding clashes, but there's only a handful of games left.
Yeah, it's not good, Shane, and like look at it, you can bring it right back down to the division scenario in our own county here, where at times you can have 2 club teams out at the same time, in terms of if you have a ladies football team or a Camogie team that could be playing at the same time as your senior hurlers or your under 20 hurlers or something like that, and that's at club level, and that takes a lot of organising to sort out. Advance it on a little bit more at the county level. Again, it takes time to work out all the different permutations in terms of fixtures, and fixtures are not an easy thing. It's probably the toughest gig that you can have, is to be a fixtures coordinator for your club or for your division or whatever. But when you come to inter-county level, the number of games will be far less than you're going to have at club level. And I think, but that doesn't mean that the problems won't be the same. They will be the same. And as we're seeing with what's going to crop up next weekend, so it's going to be a big challenge. There are going to be a lot of challenges when it comes to integration. A hell of a lot of challenges that we probably don't even realise at the minute. The kind of ones that are going to come up. I would see pressure on pitches, for instance, being a big one in clubs that have ladies football, Camogie and GAA. There's going to be huge pressure on pitches, facilities. A lot of GAA facilities around the country are not necessarily built or designed with ladies in mind, in terms of toilet facilities, showers, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of stuff to go. But I think if we don't get the fixtures one right, that's the primary one. If we do not get that right from very early in the day, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. So look, we'll touch on that game more next week as we preview those. I suppose that's 3 big knockout games in the championship. Tipping against Kenny and hurling, tipping against Meath in ladies football, and I suppose we'll wait till tomorrow to know exactly where the Tipperary Camogie team will be playing next weekend, whether it'll be on the Saturday or the Sunday. Fingers crossed it will be the Sunday, and we'll have a great day out at Croke Park. That is about it for this week's show, and thank my guests Noel London and Paul Carroll. We'll be back next week to preview the 3 big knockout championship games for senior hurlers, Camogies and ladies Camogie team and ladies footballers. Bye for now.